Hello, stellar people, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Trey, and welcome back to Artist Bootcamp day number 4 on today, the Thursday, 23rd of January. And today we'll be doing shapes, heads and hands, anatomy, and then mapping the anatomy to a mannequin. So let's get started. So of course we start off with simple shapes. We have circle, square, rectangle, and triangle as our simple shapes. So we have the program Photoshop. You can do this in any program you wish. So I make a new layer. So now we just practice making shapes, because shapes are the building blocks of art, especially simple shapes, as they comprise, when you combine them, you morph them into each other, and they can comprise a whole bunch of different objects and even people. Yes, people. And we'll go over that a bit later. But this is the standard start. And why do I do this? Why do I do this? I do this for mostly consistency. Consistency is the hardest thing to do. Being and staying consistent. It usually doesn't matter how little you do, as long as you stay consistent, you will get somewhere. Like, I can do this all day, but if I only do it, say, once every 5 years, it doesn't really mean anything. But if you did something very, very, very simple, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, but just did it consistently every week, over time, it would compound into great results. And that's mostly what artists do. We just leverage our time and just draw things over and over and over again to the point of mania. And that was simple shapes. I'm feeling kind of spicy today. I don't know why. Okay, so 3D shapes. We have the cube, the cylinder, cone, pyramid, and sphere. And the thing about 3D shapes is that it has a dimensionality where it feels like it is an object in space or taking up space. And however that light hits the object, a side can be illuminated. Like if a cube is lit from the top, it'll be the most illuminated here with shadows on all sides and other things of that nature. But let's get some practice in. So new layer. Okay, no. Now we're just going over our lines. And this is terrible. Wow, what happened? And of course, it doesn't have to be perfect. I say that as I do this very, yeah. But it's the habit. It's thinking about it and doing it. That is the key. As long as it gets done, consistency is the greatest weapon. Because to me, the idea of compounding, right? You do a little thing over a long period of time, and that thing stacks up to make something incredible. And so I don't like to think about the short term, but think about the long term. Like, this is what you're going to be doing as an artist. Well, not this exact thing, but something along these lines. Moving lines on paper for the rest of your life. And you just keep going. When others stop, you just keep going. And eventually, we just get better. Happens the same with languages and anything actually that you want to learn. If you do it a little bit over a long enough span, you'll be good. I've been drawing since I was 7, and just for fun, because it was fun. And while other children can stop, I just kept drawing. I didn't like that line, so yep. pyramid, and the sphere. And if the sphere has a highlight here, then, you know, it gradually gets into more and more shadow. So let's simulate that lightly. And then there's a shadow that it casts. The highlight would be here. And that is the sphere. And those are 3D shapes. Now let's do some heads and hands. Okay, so heads and hands. I think today we're going to go for something a little bit different. So we have the skull looking up. I think we did the two 3/4 profiles, but this one we're going to do an upshot. Now this is a straight on view, but the subject is looking up, right? But most of this stuff is still here, the cranium, but a lot of things are bunched up towards the top, right? Perspective view. But let's draw this. B for new layer, B for the brush tool. So the circle that makes up the cranium that I am cradling is there. Right. Your brain would be housed within this. And because of the angle, right, well, the character is looking up, so just looking up. So we see more of the underside of the chin here, connect to your neck. But we still have the mandible. And all of this would be shady if the light is hitting from the top. You got mandible. The hairline would be way up here, barely visible. The brow ridge also near the top. The eye line here. And we wrap this in space to give the idea that it's a spherical object. The bottom of the nose here, again, wrapping around. The mouth, and this is an extreme view. Not as commonly drawn. Usually we like to focus on characters emoting or showing emotion. And this will be, unless they're looking up at something, what in the world is that in the sky? Something like that. But that is an extreme view of the skull looking up. Let's try something with the head, my head. So do I have something extreme? Extreme. Here we go. I have one up. This is slightly up. So let's take a look at that. So again, hairline, eyebrow ridge, eyes, nose, mouth. But I'm checking if I got the shot in the camera. So I'm not as extreme as the skull, but let's draw this. Shall we? V40, V4 for 40% opacity. Make a new layer. And B for the brush tool. Again, the cranium, the hairline near the top, eyebrow ridge, eye line, nose line, mouth line. I forgot that center line. The center line always helps. Because we're pretty much even on both sides, right? Eye placement, nostrils, eyebrows. So that helps in defining the object in space. Is looking one way or the other way. Neck, the mandible. So extreme views are interesting, but they're not as well used as other views. Because again, they're hard to connect to as a viewer to a subject or a character. And so you see that less than, say, a straight-on view or a 3/4 turn. But they're always interesting. I don't practice them often, but hey. And that was heads. So let's do a hand. Let's see what we got. For today, the hand will be a pointer. Let's do that. So we got a hand pointing in a direction. So as always, new layer, and usually I start off with the basic shape. Here's the basic shape. There is a top, a side. This is the underside. This is a side plane, something like that. We got the fingers, the main pointer finger, and the other fingers are curled underneath, and the thumb, of course. But of course, right? So it always helps to break them down, and that is the hand. Okay, so when we were talking about simple shapes and more complex shapes, how they can make up the human form. So usually I start off really super rough when I start a drawing. And this is fine, right? Just squiggly lines to make up a character, because just getting the basics down and then you can clean it up afterwards. So I usually start with just roughly sketching. But for the human being breakdown, right, if we wanted to do this with more simpler shapes, we have the circle for the head, the egg shape, which is just a modified circle for the rib cage, a box for the hips. And so you can see where the side planes are, like a side plane, top plane, front plane, and the other planes that you can't quite see on the other sides. And then circles for joints. And just a stick for the limbs. And then a step up from that is circle for the head. And then you flesh that out just a little bit. Again, that circle modified to make an egg shape for the rib cage. Box for the hips. Circles for the joints. And then cylinders comprise the limbs. And that's just a step up. Right? We start simply and then we just build on top of that. Start simple to more complex. So in terms of anatomy, let's look at the anatomy and run this down. So here we have the skeleton, and then I've mapped out the muscles, and these are the simple muscles. There's a lot more than this, but I try to select the muscles that can be seen usually on a well-defined person who, say, works out or whatnot. So let's go from the top to the bottom. The trapezius is a diamond-shaped muscle on the back. The trapezius, but this upper shoulder part. The deltoid is the shoulder. The tricep is on the back of your upper arm, and it goes from back to front. Tricep, brachialis, which is the green one in the middle, and the bicep on the front. So bicep, brachialis, tricep on the back. The brachioradialis comes from the lower upper arm and then comes from the outside towards the inside of your wrist. And there are extensors and flexors, a lot of spindly muscles that help to move your hands and fingers. But we'll just, for now, just call those the extensors and flexors. The pectoralis is this large flat muscle on the front of your chest, attached to the clavicle and the sternum, and wraps across your rib cage and inserts into your upper arm. There is the external obliques, or love handles. And the pink is the latissimus dorsi, which comes from the back and wraps towards the front. Serratus anterior are these little, it's a lightning bolt-like sharp muscle that follows the rib cage. The rectus abdominis, upper and lower. The upper is the main part of your six-pack. And the dividing line is the belly button. And then below that goes down towards the groin. We have the gracilis of the upper thigh, the inner upper thigh. The adductor longus, this pink one that goes underneath the gracilis, and the sartorius. That is unique in that it comes from the hip, the outside of your hip, comes inwards towards the inner knee. Right? So it wraps into the inner knee. And the rectus femoris, which is right in the middle of your thigh. The vastus lateralis is the muscle on the outside of your thigh. The gastrocnemius, the calf muscle, seen mostly on the inside of your calf. The patella is your kneecap. The patellar tendon connects from the kneecap down towards the ankle. And on the outside of the patellar tendon is the anterior tibialis. Right, this is your tibia, and your fibula is on the outside, connects the outside of your leg. So anterior tibialis, fibularis longus on the outside, or also called the peroneus. The extensor digitorum longus is between the anterior tibialis and the fibularis longus. It's this red one here. And those are the muscles in brief. Wow, I'm just hitting everything today. Was the simple muscles of the body. So now let's map that. Let's look at a mannequin. This one here. And so first, let's make the simple shapes using this mannequin to play off of. And so circle for the main cranium shape, the circle for the modified circle for the rib cage, which is just an egg shape, the box for the hips or your pelvis area, circles for joints, so your shoulders, elbows, wrists, knees, and ankles, main points of movement. And then we have cylinders for limbs. And once you do this enough, you'll start to see this as, like the mannequin, a proto-human. It's really simple. Really, really simple. And so now let's map on some muscles. New layer, circle for the head, bring that down, the mandible, got the neck, we have the clavicle, and attached to that is the trapezius, right? The deltoid, you have two of them, shoulder muscles. Modified circle, egg shape for the rib cage. Your sternum, circles, 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 circles. Box. But for muscles, what am I doing? We got the pectoralis, large flat muscle, attaches to your sternum, your clavicle, and goes across your rib cage to attach to your upper arm. In the front of your upper arm is the bicep. The brachialis is in the middle, and the tricep is on the back. So bicep, brachialis, tricep on the back. We have the brachioradialis that comes from the outside of your that lower part of your upper arm. Goes out and comes towards the thumb. Out and towards the thumb. Extensors and flexors are other muscles within your forearm. But we're keeping it simple. We got the rectus abdominis. Rectus abdominis. Upper and lower. We have the external obliques, I call the love handles. Side. The serratus anterior is like follows along your rib cage. It always looks like a lightning bolt to me. The latissimus dorsi wraps around the back and comes towards your front. We have the gracilis of the upper thigh. Gracilis, upper thigh. The adductor longus, going towards the middle of your thigh. The sartorius that comes from the outside of your hip comes down and wraps towards the inside of your knee. So outside hip coming towards the inside of your knee. We have the rectus femoris, which is in the middle of your thigh. The vastus lateralis on the outside of your thigh. We have the patella, kneecap, patellar tendon coming from the kneecap down towards your ankle. On the inside of your calf, your lower leg, is the gastrocnemius or the calf muscles. On the outside, past the patellar tendon, is the anterior tibialis. Anterior tibialis. We have the fibularis longus, it's called the peroneus, on the outside of your calf. In between the anterior tibialis and the fibularis longus on the outside is the extensor digitorum longus. And those are the muscles for this dummy. Now let's do a statue. Okay, so last time we did David. Very famous, this one by Andrea del Verrocchio. But David is very popular. And so we're going to do another David, one of the most famous Davids, Michelangelo's David. We'll do the simple shapes first. So it'll be simple shapes, circle, head, neck, we can extend that down, mandible. The modified circle or egg shape for the rib cage, circle for joints, elbows, wrists, knees, ankles. The hip is a box shape, and he has that contrapposto, meaning that he's standing on this one leg is his dominant leg, and you get that S swish, a slight swish. It makes it more dynamic. And you can also use that in your drawings to make them more dynamic. And we have the cylinders for limbs. And that is Michelangelo's David in simple form. Now let's map some muscles on this statuesque figure. So let's see. Circle. All this is repetition. We're just doing this over and over and over again. And that's how we get better. So we got the trapezius. We have the deltoid. We have the pectoralis, which this is the sternum. You can't quite see it, but sternum along the clavicle comes down the sternum and wraps across the rib cage and into upper arm. Of the upper arm, we have the bicep brachialis. I zoned out for that moment. Brachialis and the tricep on the back. Tricep on the back. Brachioradialis from the lower upper arm comes out. You can kind of see here that bump. Brachioradial comes towards the thumb. Yeah. And then there's extensors and flexors, muscles in your forearm that helps move your fingers. The box, always like that contrapposto. External obliques, love handles. Right? Latissimus dorsi, from the back and wrapping around. And we have the rectus abdominis, the six-pack, is his belly button, which I usually use as a dividing line between the upper and the lower rectus abdominis. Serratus anterior, the gracilis for the thigh, adductor longus, sartorius from the outer hip, comes across and wraps towards the inner knee, outer hip, towards the inner knee. We have the rectus femoris, which is in the middle of your thigh. The vastus lateralis on the outside of your thigh. The patella, which is your kneecap. the patellar tendon coming from the kneecap down to your ankle. On the inside of your lower leg is your gastrocnemius, or the calf muscle. Anterior tibialis is on the outside, right next to the patellar tendon. On the far outside of your lower leg is the fibularis longus. Fibularis longus. And the extensor digitorum longus is between the fibularis longus and the anterior tibialis. And those are the muscles, in brief, of the David. It looks just like him. And I believe that is, let's take a look at the schedule. Yep, we did it. Congratulations. Another day of the boot camp. Check that off the list. We did shapes, heads and hands. We mapped the anatomy and some simple construct of the body to the mannequin and statue. Nicely done. And that concludes the boot camp for the 23rd, this Thursday. Thank you for joining me. I have been Trey. You can find my work at treyhodges.com. And I will see you on the next video, workout buddy, for Friday the 24th, where we will continue our Artist Bootcamp. Take care, keep shining, power to the creators. Bye-bye.